So you've been climbing the ranks, or perhaps you're new to the tank role and you're trying to improve, but for some reason, every time you pick up the tank role to go back and rank up and play, you just can't seem to be as consistent as you like to be. So in this video, we're going to go over 5 ways to improve as a tank main in Overwatch 2, and let's get straight to it. All that being said, if you enjoy educational content on the channel and want to see more, then as always, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let's get straight to the first point. So one of, if not perhaps the most integral aspect when it comes to learning how to play tank and improving, is knowing how to create and deny space. And every single tank is going to have their own respective responsibility and role as to how they create and deny space. So for example, the way that you would play Winston or Doomfist is going to be vastly different than playing, let's say, a more poke-driven character like Ramatra or Sigma, where they want to be playing more from a range that is more comfortable and therefore creating space in that manner. So how do you learn to create space? Well, first of all, it's important to understand that each map has its own geometry, and you're going to have to understand and do your homework to understand where your character can and cannot go on the map. So in the case of, let's say, a dive comp with Doomfist, Doomfist is a character with a lot of mobility, which means you're able to pressure the enemy backline with a lot more ease. You have a little bit more flexibility in terms of how you can deny space as well, because denying space is just as important as creating it. You want to be able to prevent the enemy from taking the space that you have, but you also want to create enough space where you give the advantage to your team, especially your DPS units, your flankers, to get the job done in the backline. And so understanding each role is going to help you to better understand how to create and deny that space. So my best advice in this situation is to learn how each tank operates. Play with the tank role, see what it's like to play a poke related composition, feel what it's like to play dive, and feel what it's like to play a brawl composition. This will give you a greater understanding of not only how to traverse the maps with a better understanding, but it will certainly help you in terms of how to, again, create space and deny space with each respective character. Now, of course, I'll be making a video guide on each respective role pertaining to poke, dive, and brawl, and we'll go into more detail with regards to how you can create space in that manner. But I wanted to keep it simple for now and just go into the simplicity of learn to create space. Learn the fact that this is a game of territory, and when you have more territory than your opponent, you're giving the opportunity for your teammates to capitalize. And when you deny the enemy their space, that means you give your team enough chance to recover. And perhaps, let's say you're in a bad fight, you can back up, deny them space, and therefore giving your team a chance to heal, maybe come back from spawn, and so on and so forth. So that being said, let's move on to the second point, which is about creating more opportunities and setting the pace. So the second point that I want to emphasize when it comes to becoming a tank main is you want to be able to create opportunities, but also setting the pace. And setting the pace could be something as simple as just creating an opening in the backline, disrupting the backline, maybe seeing that there's an enemy that's out of position and taking control of that right away. There are a lot of things that you have to consider. There are a lot of variables in setting the pace. But fundamentally speaking, the best way to set the pace is to play with patience and look for opportunities that your opponent is giving to you. So again, if let's say an enemy is out of position and you see that as a tank, you want to set the pace right away by going to the backline, disrupting it, taking care of that enemy who's out of position, and then giving your team basically the go to be more aggressive. Now, the same can be said on defense, where you can also set the pace defensively. It doesn't have to always be offensive, it can also be defensive. Let's say you're behind on a teammate. Now you have to set the pace where you want to slow the momentum down of the enemy. So let's say it's a 4v5 scenario and your team is down one person, rather than trying to fight that 4v5, knowing that you're likely to lose it, you're better off slowing things down and backing up, giving up some space that you've created to therefore reset the scenario, reset the neutral, and therefore start from the beginning. So that's how you really want to, set the tone, set the pace for the game. It's really a back and forth game. It's not just momentum. There are going to be times where you have to slow down and really analyze the situation with a careful lens. And once you've understood that and applied that over time through consistent practice, you'll therefore be able to really truly grasp and really pay attention to the smaller details to help you set the pace a lot faster. So that being said, let's move on to the third point. Whether you're in bronze or you're in top 500, there are always going to be cases where you tend to forget what you're doing in the spur of the moment. There's so much going on that you tend to forget what you're supposed to do. And it's only natural because, well, we're only human after all. But the most important thing, if you're looking to play and improve on tank, is you want to learn every role of what a tank does. And so I mentioned this earlier, where you have the poke composition, the dive composition, and the brawl composition. These three of which play an integral role in the flow of the game Overwatch. And so it's important to understand what each tank does, the responsibilities in each composition, and how they can amplify, or rather change the momentum, set the tone and the pace depending on where you are on the map. Because each character is going to have their own respective strengths on certain maps. Some characters, for example Sigma, as we all know, is really strong on maps with a long sight line. So Circle Royale, Junkertown are good examples. And so you want to be taking advantage of that tank on that particular map, because their particular composition or play style is going to favor you down the road. Now, that isn't to say that other characters or other tanks can't benefit from playing on Junkertown or playing on Circle Royale. It's just that Sigma, as a poke driven character, his role as a tank is to create space through poking. His responsibility isn't to be in the front of the line and trying to brawl his way through, like, let's say, a Junker Queen or Reinhardt would do. His responsibility as a tank is to remain at mid-range, maybe sometimes longer, and just poke people and just whittle them down and waste their cooldowns and put the enemy in a state of fear where they can't come close to you, and if they try, they're going to get cooked. Now, the counter to that, of course, is a dive, where if you're poking from mid-range, you can just dive on the enemy backline and ignore the tank completely, and therefore gain advantage from that perspective. But then again, that requires a deep understanding of how dive works. So my best advice in this case, if you are picking up tank, or perhaps you want a refresher, just remind yourself that it is important to learn every role, because every role will give you a deep understanding of how you want to approach every single game that you play. You can one trick your way to victory, sure, but the best types of players that end up becoming masters of their tank or respective role are ones who understand how each composition works, how they affect the momentum of the game, how they set the pace of the game, but most importantly, how they all put things together to create space, but also deny space. So hopefully this little basic fundamental explanation gave you some insight as to how you can improve. So let's go to the next point. So one of the more fundamental aspects when it comes to learning and just improving on a tank overall is you really want to learn how to study and master character cooldowns. So this is really important because knowing the enemy is just as important as knowing your own playstyle, because knowing what counters you or knowing what favors you can determine the difference between you winning a game or you losing it outright. And so learning what characters' cooldowns are can really help you to make a bigger impact depending on the role you decide to choose. So I'll give you an example. In my case, I love dive. Dive is really a composition that I love a lot. It gives me a lot of creativity. It provides me with the chance to really make cool, impactful plays, and just that freedom of mobility is really, really nice. And so I have to learn which characters are going to counter me. And the best way to learn that is to play the character. In this case, Ana is a really, really, really annoying character to deal with versus Doomfist. So I had to figure out, okay, well, what cooldowns do I have to be mindful of? And how long can I, let's say, take advantage of this cooldown when it's not in use? So once Ana uses her sleep dart, for example, now I have the momentum. I can now be more aggressive because I understand that within that time frame of Ana not having her sleep dart, I can now push the enemy team knowing that I don't have the risk of being slept, being anti-nated. So now my freedom of expression is enabled versus when Ana does have her cooldowns, I have to be a little bit more mindful of my aggression. I have to play more patiently. I have to once again create space, but doing so in a way that doesn't put my team in danger or myself in danger. So these are things you have to really consider and dive deep on. And so I really encourage you, if you are not even a new player, if you are, then of course I encourage this. But even if you've been playing the game for a while, use this as a refresher and say, you know what, I got to go back and restudy what Ana can do or restudy what Sombra can do against my character. Just knowing these cooldowns can really, really, really convert you and turn you into an absolute tank threat, because your enemy, most likely, maybe they don't know as much information as you do. And in the game of Overwatch, information is so critical. It's so imperative to have the information. And the more info you have on the enemy than they do, you'll likely win more often. So all that being said, let's dive into the final topic, which is all about careful positioning and using that to your advantage. Your position means everything in Overwatch 2. Whether you're playing dive, brawl, poke, whatever the case may be, where you position yourself is just as important as the matchup itself, the composition itself, because where you position yourself on the map in relation to your teammates, but also your targets, will really determine whether you win or you come out the loser. And all of this will likely differ depending on what role you actually play. So for example, if you're playing Reinhardt, your position you want to be up close, you want to be in the front line, you want to be able to be in the face of the other tank and just kind of tank your way through, brawl your way through, get through that enemy position with brute force, versus someone like Doom, where you want to be a little bit more calculating, a little bit more patient, because you're waiting for the right openings to create space, earn value for your team, allowing your DPS to get value for your dive, and therefore giving your supports enough chance to play their role and heal you when need be. And positioning isn't just about playing high ground and low ground. Positioning can also refer to that of playing around the geometry. So taking cover is really, really important. You want to be able to utilize everything around you, whether it be a small wall to the corner, whether it be hiding inside the house and playing a flank. These are all things that you need to consider as a tank player, because everything around you is your instrument. Everything around you is your play toy, and learning how to master the geometry around you can really help determine whether you win more consistently or you happen to flip-flop between your wins and losses. And so all of this will come with time. This isn't something that you're going to learn overnight, because all of these tips require that you study the game really, really carefully. Step 1 through step 5 all require you to sit down with the game and spend a lot of time learning each respective role, what it can and can't do for you, how it can benefit you. And to be honest with you, the most important thing is, as long as you're having fun with the respective role you choose, that will also help you win more games too. Because if you're having fun playing brawl, then play brawl. If you have fun playing dive, then play dive, and so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, pick a role that matters to you, pick a role that you find fun, and then take these tips into consideration, apply them over time, and before you know it, you'll go from your respective rank to the rank you ultimately desire. All that being said, thank you so much for stopping by and tuning in. I appreciate all your support moving forward. Look forward to the next video. We'll be going into more detail about tank roles. So until then, my new warriors, as always, take care and peace.